afternoon. Thank you for the safety you brought to each and every one of us. Even as we learn at your feet, we ask that you speak to each and every one of us. We pray for our facilitator. We ask that you grant him wisdom and speak through him. For as many who are still on their way coming, we ask that you hasten their footsteps and help them to arrive here safely. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. Alright, good afternoon everybody, welcome. So we'll look at questions today, and then that thing we're doing on the WhatsApp page, those memes that I sent to the page, we'll just try to see if we can finish addressing them. I think that we actually did quite a good job with responding to the things that were raised, but there are still a couple of issues that were not attended to. Alright, so we'll do questions in the next few minutes, and let's see how far it goes. There's word counts today, so we need to be done on time so that we can set up this place. Alright, so I said that what we are doing is dual. We need to be able to ensure that we have content to present in our bid to be able to give logical answers for Christianity. And apart from that, we also need to be able to know how to use what we have. Because you can have content and not know how to use it, and then you can have strategies and not have content. So what you need to do is you need to be able to have content, and then you have the way to apply the content. So like I said, this is part of a specific thing that I'm running under this apologetics thing. This is tools of engagement, how to engage people. So the first thing we're dealing with is questions. And like I said, from time to time, we'll take a particular tool and exploit it, even though the bulk of what we will be doing is more of generating content for being able to engage with people. So questions. There are three things that questions do for us, basically. At least I've grouped them into three things. I think that there are more, but I've tried to group them into three things. And I hope that we can see how that goes on as we go on. First of all, let someone read from Matthew chapter 16. Matthew chapter 16. From verse 13 to 16. Matthew 16 from 13 to verse 16. Matthew chapter 16, popular passage from verse 13 to 16. Now, when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" And they said, "Some say John the Baptist, and others say Elijah, and others Jeremiah, or one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter replied, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." So in verse 13, Jesus comes and Jesus says, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" What kind of question is that? Jesus comes, if you're reading in King James, Jesus says in the King James, "Who do people say that I, the Son of Man, am?" What kind of question is that? Of course, but you should know that the Son of Man title is a reference to the divinity of Jesus. When Jesus calls himself the Son of Man, it's actually a messianic title, right? When he calls himself the Son of God, that's actually more clearly a reference to his humanity. So when the Bible says that Jesus is the Son of God, more times than not, it actually means that Jesus is man, basically. When he calls himself the Son of Man, more times than not, it actually means that Jesus is the Messiah, right? It's a fulfillment of the prophecy of Daniel chapter 7. if you go home later, you can read Daniel chapter 7, verse 13, 14. You would see, you would see the messianic prophecy about the Son of Man. So Jesus comes to his disciples and says, who do people say that I, the Son of Man, am? That's supposed to be. If I were there, I would say, you are the Son of Man. Right? So they said, some people say this. He now says, okay, but who do you say that I am? And then Peter says this thing that he says, but if I were the one, I'll tell him you are the Son of Man. That's the answer to your question. You've answered the question. You are the Son of Man. You're asking me, right? This shows that Jesus was doing something else with the question. Okay? Jesus was not asking this question because he didn't know the answer. Right? He wasn't asking because he didn't know the answer. And a lot of times, it's one of the wise things that you can do with questions. This is the point. You can ask someone a question that you know the answer to. I know when we were in school, we used to tell people not to do it. You know, you have a presentation, and then you give your presentation, then people start asking you questions. And you know that the questions they're asking you, you know that they know the answer, but they just want to make everybody know that you don't know. Right? Of course, that's not proper in that context. But a lot of times, the answers to the questions that you would ask people are not apparent to the people. A lot of times, people hold worldviews that they do not know are contradictory. People hold beliefs that they do not know are contradictory. People hold views that they do not know are contradictory. And the reason they do not know those things are contradictory is because Alright, last week we were talking about truth, right? And we were talking about coherence, about how that a belief system would have many strands of statements, right? But all of them must cohere in the middle. The point is that a lot of times, people do not bring those statements of truth together. So they do not even see the contradiction. Do you get the point?
Yes, sir.
You don't get the point. Let me explain again. Alright, so let's use our brethren that say they are immortal. Okay? I just like the example because it's an easy way to throw a shade, which is exactly what I'm doing. So, someone comes to you and tells you that they are children of God, right? And they are immortal because of certain things they see in the Bible, right? And then 6 months later, they now come to tell you that they are celebrating their birthdays. Now, you know that saying I am immortal and saying that you are celebrating your birthday, you know that it's contradictory, right? But the point is that they didn't say the two statements on the same day. They didn't make those two statements on the same day. You see, because if you are immortal, it means you were never born. You didn't have a beginning, you will have no end. That's what it means, right? So, why are you celebrating a birthday? It actually means you are not immortal. So, there is a contradiction between those two statements. But because they didn't make the statements on the same day, they can't piece them together to see that there is a contradiction. Do you understand? They can say this one today and they can say this thing 6 months later. So it actually looks like there is no contradiction. Meanwhile, there is an apparent contradiction that you can see, but they cannot see. A lot of the times, the way you draw it out is with questions. Yeah. Let me not run ahead of myself, but one of the things that questions helps you to do is to ensure that you're not preaching at people. You see, a lot of people don't like people preaching at them. People don't like it at all. They tell you that I don't want anybody to judge me. I'm sure you've heard those kind of statements. Don't judge me. And all the funny things that people say, right? A lot of the times, the way you are going to be able to reach out to people without looking like you are judgy or without looking like you are preaching at them is not by telling them things. It's by asking them questions about the things they believe in. So let me give this example. Like I said, I think I mentioned this. I was in a village one time. We went for an outreach. 2018, I think. Went for an outreach. So There was this Muslim guy that came to the outreach. It was a medical outreach and all of that, a Christian medical outreach. So, there was this Muslim guy that came to the outreach. They gave him drugs and everything. So eventually he came down to the prayer place. But when the people that counseled wrote that the guy, they tried to talk to him to get saved, but the guy was not interested. So if we could pray for him and all of that. So I took the paper from him and I asked him, you are a Muslim? He says, yeah, he's a Muslim. He was a young guy. And then he said that he was not interested in Christianity because he has always been brought up a Muslim and he thinks that that's what is right and Christianity is wrong and all of that. So I was happy because the guy was trying to engage me. So I decided to engage him. So I asked him a few questions. I asked him that, do you have a wife? And he said, yes, he has a wife. I said, how many wives does he have? He said he has only one wife. Why do you have one wife? You're entitled to 4. And he says, yeah, but he's pretty satisfied with that one woman. He doesn't see any reason why he should marry 4 women and everything. So I'm like, okay. What if you go home and you find your wife sleeping with another man? He said he's going to kill the woman. He said he's going to kill her. I said, why? He said, that why would she cheat on him and all of that? So I'm like, okay. So what if you don't catch her? What if she just lies to you? Right? He said he still will not be happy if she lies to him. Now, all I was doing was questions. Now, what I knew from the start where I was going, but I had to go that route because I needed to establish some emotional basis to what I wanted to do, right? Which I said last week, sometimes you have to, you can't dodge it sometimes. It's not manipulation, right? There's a difference between that and manipulation, but you can actually bring in the truth and show the emotional side of the truth. Sometimes it appeals to people more than logic. So I now asked him that, does he think that Jesus Christ existed? He said, yes. I said, does he think that Jesus Christ died on the cross? He said, no. I said, what happened? Because I know the Muslim story. So I asked him what happened. And he said that God exchanged Jesus' body. Right? So Jesus was hung on the cross, but Jesus didn't die. Right? In fact, Jesus did not go through all of that shame because Jesus is a prophet and prophets cannot be allowed to go through shame. I mean, the kind of shame that Jesus went through. So Jesus didn't die. Allah exchanged him on the cross and it was someone else that died. God took Jesus to heaven immediately and the Christians were not, they were none the wiser. The Christians were deceived. So I asked him that means Allah lies? And as soon as I asked him that question, he knew exactly where I had been going all the while. Because this guy was not going to live with a woman that was going to lie to him. He wasn't going to live with a woman that was going to cheat on him. Why should he live with a God that lied to us? And then he was quiet. And then I asked him that. And then I told him, so at this point I started saying, because all I had done up until that point was ask questions. At this point, I now began saying that I know a God that does not lie. Would he like to meet that God? And the guy was like, yeah. The Christian God doesn't lie. And he gave his life to Christ. Now, you see, Muslims are one of the most notorious people to preach to. Like, they are very, very defensive. I don't know if you've spoken to a Muslim about, they are very defensive. They don't take to questioning most of the times. It's even worse when, please can we turn off those things? It's even worse, yeah. It's even worse when you're trying to preach at them. It's not going to work at all. You can just turn it off from that. Yeah, thank you. It's not going to work at all if you're trying to preach at them. Which is why a lot of people that do Islam apologetics say that some of the most effective ways to reaching out to Muslims is to be friends with them. Yeah, be friends. Like you go and preach to them, I lie. They are going to slap you in your face and come back. Right? So a lot of times people say that it's better to take the long course. Be friends with them. You can work on one person for 9 years, 10 years, and eventually lead the person to Christ. Right? But I got the job done in 15 minutes. And what I did was I used questions. Questions. A lot of times what you do with questions, the first thing you do with questions is that it allows you to gather information. Right? Questions allow you to gather information. This is because the truth is you are not knowledgeable on every subject. You don't know everything. For example, if I meet a Buddhist and I want to preach to the Buddhist currently, I'm not going to start off by telling him how Buddhism is wrong. I'm not going to do that because I may have some basic knowledge about the core terms or the core tenets of the Buddhist thing, but I don't know a lot of the things about what they believe. So the easiest thing to do is to get the person to tell me what they believe, right? And then I can point out the contradictions. So one of the things that questions helps you to do is that it helps you to gather information. It helps you to gather information. And this does a lot of things. Like I said, number one, you do not know enough about every subject. You are not knowledgeable about everything. It's best for them to volunteer the information, right? Number two, it helps people to see you as gracious. There is a way that people look at you when they know that you are interested in what they believe. Right? You are not just coming to come and shove Christianity down your throat. I don't care what you've been doing, just take this thing. Right? You are actually interested in what they believe. What do you believe? How do you know what they believe? The only way you will know what they believe is if they spell it out to you. And the only way is if you ask them questions. Right? And the third sub point under this is that it helps you to not attack a straw man. You know what is a straw man? Right? Gift, do you know what is a straw man? Alright. Who else doesn't know what is a straw man? No, that's not the question. Who doesn't know what is a straw man? Just raise your hand if you don't know what is a straw man. Alright, so Long T, tell us what you think a straw man is.
I'm raising my hand.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Ruth, what's a straw man?
I think it's that guy that they put on at the farms.
Yes, that's the guy. So why are we talking about the guys that they put on farms here?
Guys they put on the farms. Okay. He's not real.
What?
No.
Yeah, so he's not a real man. It's a fake man, right? Aisha, you should tell us. So you're a veteran in these things. So what's a straw man? You said? Aisha, tell us, what's a straw man? Yeah, but from what Ruth said, it's quite easy to figure out, right? Do you want to help us? Do you want to help us?
From what she said.
Or from what you know, whatever. You don't want to help us. Alright, Casey, do you want to help us?
I think it's when you have the wrong idea of what people believe. You're attacking that wrong idea when it's not really what they believe in.
Alright, yeah, that's what it is. So you get the point. Like, you know how birds always come to poke on people's farm produce and all of that? If there's someone on the farm, they're not going to come because they're going to be scared. So you can mount up a straw man. That's basically, you can mount up, put sticks, then put a hat, put clothes. So those birds think that there's someone on the farm, right? Meanwhile, there's no one on the farm. But that's not a real man. Do you get the point? The birds are deceived, right? Because there's a caricature of a man. It works, but we know that this is just nonsense, really. So what a straw man is when someone does that kind of thing. Your view is a man, but the person builds a caricature of your view with straws and wood and puts a hat on it and says, look at the nonsense you believe. Then they slap it down and say, okay, we've slapped it down. Meanwhile, if you slapped a real man, the man will not have fallen down. Do you get the point? Does it make sense? So that a fake idea or a watered down idea or a simplistic version of what you believe is now attacked by people, and they now think that they are actually attacking what you actually believe. For example, someone says that I cannot believe in a God that says, if you don't worship me, I'll throw you into hell. Now, that's not our idea of God. That's not who God is. That may be the street version of who God is, right? But that's not what Christians believe. Christians don't believe that God is like that. So if someone was saying that I have issues with a God that will send people to hell if they don't worship him, and the person attacked that idea of God, what the person has done is attack a straw man. He has not attacked the Christian God. Unfortunately, as a Christian, you can do the same thing when you attack a straw man of what other people believe, and you don't attack the main thing. So you finish giving your argument, and the person says, that's a beautiful argument, but I don't believe this thing you just said. Do you get the point? You want to ensure that you are responding to what they perceive as their view or what is their own position. Okay? So that's one of the things questions helps you do. I said it helps you to gather information. So it helps you to learn what they are saying. It helps you to appear gracious. You want to be seen to care about their state. And then finally, it also helps you to not attack a straw man. So you know exactly what the person is saying. Right? And then you can go after what that person is saying. Now that's the first thing about questions. The second thing about questions is that it helps you to reverse the burden of proof. It helps you to reverse the burden of proof. Reverse. You're driving backwards. To reverse the burden of proof. Now, a lot of times, people say that, okay, so someone comes to you. Maybe let's even do it. Long T, I come to you and I tell you that you're a Christian, right? We're having a conversation. You're a Christian, right?
Yeah.
I think God does not exist.
Why do you think he does not?
Now, you see what just went on here? What went on here is actually what is meant to go on. If you come to me and you tell me you think God does not exist, you should be able to prove why you are saying this thing, right? A lot of times, the reverse is actually what happens. Someone comes to you and tells you, I think God does not exist. Then I'll say, no. I have 7 arguments for why God exists. Now, this is the problem with that. The problem with that is that you are not the person that initiated the conversation. You are not the person presenting the view. You really don't have anything to defend. If I come to you and tell you that I think God does not exist, I'm supposed to be able to give you proof from my position. I'm not supposed to say it and expect you to argue against my position. Right? So, of course, this is being defensive, right? So, I'm on the defensive here. I'm the Christian, but I'm on the defensive. You came to me to attack me. So, I'm going to stay on the defensive throughout. My job is to show holes in your argument first, and then to give you a superior argument that trounces your argument. Okay? So that the person that is making the claim is supposed to shoulder the burden of proof. Do you get it? So the point is, you should not allow anybody to bully you. Someone just comes to you and says that, oh, you people Christians, you guys are so confused. Then you're like, why would you say that? Then you say, how can you believe in Jesus? That thing was a myth. And then you now start trying to prove that it was not a myth. No. The person has to prove how that it was a myth. That's actually how it goes. Do you get the point? So that you are meant to ensure that the burden of proof is carefully placed on whoever is making the argument, whoever is making the claim. There are many times when we go on the offensive, we shoulder the burden of proof. For example, if I come to preach to you and I'm trying to tell you how that Islam is false and Christianity is true, I am meant to give the person reasons for why he should abandon his belief, right? But if someone comes to meet me, right, or if someone initiates a conversation, or if someone makes a claim at any point, the person is supposed to shoulder the burden of proof for his claim. Do you get the point? So apart from starting the conversation or making the claim, I'm even saying that for any statement, you are meant to shoulder the burden of proof for your statement. And a lot of times, people push it to Christians. It looks like Christians are the only people that have to shoulder the burden of proof, and all they have to do is to show that they don't believe, or is to say that it's not possible, or is to say that it's not probable, whatever the case. The way that lawyers do it is that if, for instance, if I came with a motion, I want to prosecute Juliet for something, for example, and I come to court and I say that I want to prosecute her for something, right? For stealing money, for example. You are defending her, right? You don't want me to move forward to trial, right? All you have to do is to ensure that, all I have to do is to ensure that there is at least reasonable doubt for the case to proceed to trial. Do you get? I don't have to prove that she did it. I'm the prosecutor. All I have to do is to show that there is reasonable doubt. If there is a little shred of doubt that she is not innocent, right? Then the case is moving forward to trial. I'm saying that a lot of times that's what people make Christians do. They just want you to keep talking, and then they'll just bring up one speck of doubt and say that you have failed. No, that's not how it works. If you do like that, you're going to get very exhausted very easily. Right? And then you're also going to get into useless talk with people that are really not interested in finding out. They just want to make trouble. Right? And at some point, you should engage people that make trouble. It just helps you know how to respond to people. And then it helps you keep your emotions in check. But at some point, you don't have time for that rubbish. You really don't have time for that nonsense. What we are meant to be committed to is we are meant to be committed to helping honest people find the truth. Right? We are not meant to be committed to answering everybody's questions. So someone comes at me and says, how can you say the Bible is true? If the Bible is true, how is it possible that Noah's Ark existed and then animals from the other end of the earth started swimming? They now swam and entered into Noah's Ark. Okay, so let's pretend that thing is a very stupid thing to believe. Because it's not stupid. The same God that can tell snails to start crawling from this door to this ark can tell dogs to start running from Europe. Why is it hard to understand that that's possible? But let's even believe that that's stupid. How does that do anything to Jesus died, he was buried, he rose? If you don't believe in him, you go to hell. How does that do anything to it? I mean, you see, you cannot, even if you prove that the book of Genesis is a lie. That's even if you prove that the book of Genesis is a lie. It doesn't do anything to the Christian faith. It doesn't. Right? If all you had to go on were the 4 Gospels, you'll be a Christian. So if you don't want to believe Genesis, leave it. Let's leave it. Let's focus on Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Or either anyone you choose of those 4 books. Right? Do you get the point? I'm trying to say that people can send you on a wild goose chase. Okay, so if Adam and Eve gave birth to Cain and Abel, after Abel died, who did Cain marry? What's my business? What's my business who Cain married? Cain said, I don't want my punishment to be too much because if people see me, they will kill me. Who are the people that Cain was talking about that God had to put a mark on his head so that those people will not kill him? Is it important for anything? Like there are many, and a lot of times when we do apologetics talks, these kind of questions come up a lot. But they are just very fanciful questions that people just like to. It's just curiosity. And it's fine to be curious. It's okay to be curious. And there are answers to those questions. But those things are not important for anything. They are not relevant to the subject that we're discussing. Do you get the point? So don't allow anybody to bully you into trying to explain the unexplainable. Okay? You must ensure that the burden of proof is carefully placed. When you are making a claim, you should be able to shoulder the burden of proof. That's what we're doing when we're saying that we must have content. We must know what we're talking about, right? But if someone is making a claim, they should be able to shoulder their burden of proof. And one of the easiest ways to do it is questions. So he says, I don't believe that God exists. The question she asks is, why don't you believe God exists? Right? So, let's continue our discussion. I don't believe that God exists. You said why, right?
Yes, why don't you believe?
Alright. So the reason I don't believe is because I don't think there's any evidence to show that God exists.
Where have you looked for evidence?
Now, do you see what's going on? She's being smart. Where have you looked for evidence? This guy, where did you check, right? That's okay. What you are doing is that you are making the person to talk. So the person now says, I checked in the Bible, I checked in history books. I think that the Bible is just a fabrication of young children's tales. And all those history books, none of them really talk about the fact that Jesus is God.
You said you have read the Bible. Where in the Bible?
That's the point. Keep asking questions. Let the questions be stupid as keep asking questions. Don't allow the person. So the person now says, I've read the Bible. You now say, no, that's not what the Bible says. Wait, you now carry your book. That's not how to do it. Keep asking questions. Just continue. So where in the Bible did you say you read that you concluded that Jesus is not God? Alright? Recently I was talking, I put something on my status actually. And what I put on my status was, there was this comment I saw Davido. Davido made a comment. He said that many people who are not Christians will go to heaven. Yeah. I still have the screenshots. So I put it on my status. And on my status, I now wrote that everybody is talking about, what did I say? Everybody is talking about maybe spiritual realities or something. And I wrote, even Davido. And someone came to my status. Someone came to my inbox to respond to that status and said that, why am I judging? Am I trying to say that Davido cannot talk about spiritual things? I said that he can give his opinion, but he doesn't have the right to make a judgment on these issues. Right? Because the Bible is very clear about the people that should teach doctrine. If you read 1 Timothy, if you read Titus, you see that the Bible is clear. There is a recommendation for people that should be bishops or for people that should be leaders in church. And those are the people that can make judgment calls on these issues. You can say your opinion. I think everybody will go to heaven. That's fine. That's your opinion. But you can't come and say that everybody will go to heaven. They are not the same thing. Right? And eventually, she starts telling me how that, we Pentecostals, we're very, let me just say, like, we're all up in our head. We think that the only way to go to heaven is by believing in Jesus. Meanwhile, Jesus himself said that it's by love. If you don't love your neighbor, you won't go to heaven. So I now told her to bring the passage. She now brought Matthew 25, where Jesus was talking about the sheep and the goats, right? So I now said, okay, so by her explanation, what she was saying is that the goats are going to go to hell, the sheep are going to go to heaven, because the sheep I was hungry, you gave me to eat, I was in prison, you came to check on me. So by her assessment, that's how to go to heaven, right? So I now asked her, I told her I'm going to ask her 3 questions, and I just want her to answer. She said, okay, that's fine. So I asked, no, before then, I told her that the Bible is very clear on how to be saved. I copied Romans chapter 10. If you believe in your heart, you confess with your mouth. She now said that, see me. Jesus said something very clearly. I'm going to Paul. And I said, I'm sorry, she should not be angry. I said, let's leave. That's actually when I knew that the issues were deep. So I said that she should not vex. So that let's just go back to Jesus. So I brought John chapter 4, right? John chapter 14, sorry. Where Jesus was saying, in my Father's house, no. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. She now said that she doesn't think that passage is talking about Jesus, talking about heaven. That she thinks she said that it's talking about coming to the Father in prayer. Yeah. So you should be able to come to the Father in prayer, and the only way is to come through Jesus. I said, okay, that's fine. So I went to John chapter 14. You see, because one of the things you need to be able to do, is you need to be able to ensure that at the time you are ending this conversation, you have presented your case beyond reason or beyond reasonable doubt. That's what you want to do. Because from that John chapter 10, I could have finished her, killed the gist there, but there was no point. I wanted to give her many layers, right? So I went to John chapter 14, where Jesus was saying, I go to prepare a place for you and all of that. And then she said, no, this thing is not talking about heaven. I'm like, okay, what is it talking about? She now said, okay, me that I'm saying is talking about heaven. Why do I think he's talking about heaven? I said, no. That's not how we do this thing. So whatever I say, she's going to turn it on me and make me defend. Then she'll now say, nah, I really don't believe this. And I didn't have that kind of time. So I told her that whatever he's talking about is not important. Jesus was basically saying he was going to go somewhere and he was going to come back and take the people that believe in him away to that place. Wherever that place is, let's leave it. She said, okay. I said, okay, John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whoever believes in him will perish. Whoever believes in him will not perish, but have eternal life. Verse 17 and verse 18. Jesus was now saying that if anybody does not believe in him, he is condemned already, because the sentence abides in him. I mean, you have that sentence of condemnation already. Because you didn't believe, you're already condemned. It's after you now believe in Jesus that thing is taken away. So I gave her that passage, and then she starts twisting the thing. The way she twisted it, I knew that she knew that I was right, but she didn't want to admit. Alright? So I now said that this is your love thing. Finally, this is your love issue. Jesus said that the way to love is to love God and to love your neighbor. That's the way to love. You can't love only your neighbor. It's love. And you are talking about loving your neighbor only, right? But you have not addressed loving God. You've not addressed believing in Jesus and all of that. Eventually, she said, let's agree to disagree. Right? And you see, that was fine by me. Because you came to my inbox. You're the one that carry your leg come. I didn't come to preach to you. You're the one that entered, right? So I think I even told you. That was when I now asked her, why are you a Christian? I asked her, why are you a Christian? And then she said, because she was born to a Christian home. I'm like, no, that's not why you're a Christian. That's how you came to be a Christian. Why are you a Christian? She said, because she believes in Jesus. I said, no, that's not why you're a Christian. That is what you believed that made you become a Christian. Why? Because I wanted to know, if it's only good works that will take you to heaven, then why are you doing Jesus? Why don't you run it another way? Do you get the point? Eventually, we didn't have that conversation because she just changed the topic, and it was fine by me. So, at some point, in fact, you have to be gracious. When you see that you're winning the person, just leave them. Sometimes. If it was in public, I would ensure that I don't embarrass the person, right? But I will also ensure that the people listening to us know that the person is wrong. So there are many times that I would keep pushing because of the audience. Sometimes it's on Facebook, people are reading the threads and all of that. But you don't want to embarrass the person. But sometimes the person is just making it impossible. Like, you are trying to make this person not look like a fool. And the person is forcing you to do it, right? Whatever. It's very sweet to do it, but you have to hold yourself and not do that. I was talking about reversing the burden of proof. Don't allow anybody to make you shoulder the burden of proof for a statement you did not make. Right? For a statement you did not make. So in engagement, one of the things you need to do is that, because people are going to say what you did not say a lot of times, you're going to have to bring them back and say, no, come back. Where did I say this thing that you said? Where did I say it? Where is it said? Someone comes to you and says that Christianity and science cannot be compatible because the Bible says that the earth is 6,000 years old and science says that the earth is 4.5 billion years old, right? And then I see Christians jumping to defend this position. I have a friend that is supposed to be an apologist himself that did this kind of thing. I saw his thing. the Bible says the earth is 6,000 years old. Science says, how do we? And I'm saying, where in the Bible does the Bible say the earth is 6,000 years old? Where? Because people make all sorts of implications from the things you say, but you never said those things. You need to ensure that you bring them back and say, no. Where did I say this thing you said? Right? A lot of times, reverse the burden of proof when they are making a statement that you are not making. Questions help you do that. I've said that it helps you to make progress without coming across as preachy. Then finally, under this reversing the burden of proof, it brings clarity to the person asking the question. It brings clarity to the person asking the question. A lot of times, people have confused ideas in their head that they actually need help teasing out. They actually need help. And questions are the mother of clarity. They help to bring clarity in ways that your speech may not. It's always beautiful when someone realizes by themselves that there's something wrong with what I'm saying. I mean, it's way cooler than when you say it. Because when you say it, it looks like you are saying they are fools. But when they say it or when they realize it, they actually know that, oh, there's something off here, right? I was interviewing this lady, a Muslim lady, and that was for one of the RZM assignments. And I asked her about salvation in the end. I'm like, how do you guys go to heaven? And she said there are two things. I said, okay, one. She said, one, you have to do good works. Your good works must outweigh your bad. And two, Allah has to have the final say. So I'm like, no. Which one is it? Is it that your good works should outweigh your bad, or Allah has the final say? She now says it's both. I'm like, okay, I want to know how. And she says you should do good works. And then she now started to tell me how that the good works is not about quantity. It's about quality. Right? On the Islamic worldview, that's what it is. So you can do one good work that has the rating of $100,000. Then you do small bad things that are like $5. Eventually, your credit score will be like $72,000. So you're supposed to get into heaven, right? And then you come to Allah, and Allah says no. So I had to ask her, now, if you die, do you think you're going to go to heaven? And she said she doesn't know. Yes, she said she doesn't know. Because that's the truth. If you follow the Islamic worldview, the logical conclusion is you cannot be sure of your salvation. Because apart from the good works and bad things, that's not all. In the end, is whatever Allah says that happens. So, now, if I had come and I had told her that, how can you subscribe to a religion where you are not sure of your eternal destiny? Right? That's going to look like I'm preaching at her. She's not going to be able to work it out from what I'm saying. Oh. But what I did was I enabled her to see the issue with her worldview. Did you get the point? I enabled her to see the issue. And the way was questions. Sometimes your questions are going to be harsh and hard. You are going to wish that you didn't ask the person. Or the person is going to wish that you didn't ask him or her. But eventually it brings out clarity. That's part of the reasons that as Christians we are not afraid of questions. Because we don't have anything to hide. There's nothing in Christianity that is illogical. Nothing. Not one. So if you ask me a question about any of it, I'm very confident to answer. Our Muslim friends are not on that level of confidence. So there are certain questions you ask them and they start getting angry. That's happened to me a couple of times. You're talking, and they just get angry. Right? A lot of times when emotions are involved, it's because there's no content. There's no content. So one of the things you want to do again is that you want to ensure that emotions do not get involved. The moment emotions get involved, you've lost the argument. Not necessarily the argument, you've lost the person. Right? So it's better, if you notice that the person is getting worked up, it's better to postpone the gist. Or it's even better to change the topic. Leave it. Did you get the point? But the reason the person is getting worked up is because the person knows that there's nothing there. Do you get the point? If you go for an exam and they ask you something you know, you'll be happy to answer now. But if they now ask you the one you don't know, then the person is now insisting you must answer that question. You will now come out of the hall saying that that person is wicked. It's at that point that ladies used to start crying in exam hall. Have you seen a guy? Have you heard of a guy that cried? No. If you cry as a guy, you failed. As a guy, you start crying in the exam hall, you failed the exam. But if you're a lady, if you cry, they can help you. Tips. I'm giving you tips. Just cry small. Just this. The problem is that you will only start getting emotional when there's no content. That's how it works usually. The moment emotions start getting into the picture, it's either the person is being defensive or the person knows that what you're saying is right, but the person doesn't want to admit. There's really no reason, if we're having an argument about something that the Bible teaches or whatever, it even happens among Christians. We're talking about a particular issue and one person is getting angry. Why are you getting angry? Now you write Bible. Why are you getting angry? And it's very prevalent though. You have no idea how prevalent this thing is, even among Christians. Even among Christians. The person starts getting angry, emotions come into and once emotions come in, just change the topic or leave it. Especially if you are trying to win someone to Christ. Don't push it too far. Did you get the point? Don't push it too far. But I was saying that questions helps to bring clarity to the questioner. You see, in that moment, the person may be angry. When the person goes back to his privacy, the person can actually, if the person is thoughtful, the person can actually see that actually there was no answer to this question. Did you get the point? Alright, that's the second. The third is that it helps you to lead the conversation. It helps you to lead the conversation. And it takes a lot of skill to lead a conversation. It takes a lot of skill to lead a conversation. But it's a skill that we must all learn if we're going to be as effective as possible in our engagements. It's a skill that we must all learn. Have you noticed, maybe if you've engaged with a few atheists, have you noticed how easy or how quickly they start throwing insults? You've come across that kind of thing, yeah? You're talking to someone and the person just starts using swear words, the person starts insulting you and calling you names. That's when you know whether you can lead a conversation or not. You keep a cool head and says, I don't appreciate you calling me names, but nonetheless, you have not responded. Very courteously. There was one guy on Facebook, I think it was even this year. There was someone, he was in MCI 2018. He was in 2018. Abi? No, I think was Joshua in your set?
Joshua.
Or Panachi. Yes, he was in your set, right? He was doing one Facebook argument with one guy. The guy started insulting him. So I said that this brother needs help. So I came into the picture and I told the guy that he should calm down. That why is he insulting somebody and all of that? So I threw one small shade at the guy. So the guy now started responding to me. So and the guy started talking. The guy started throwing insults at me. Every time I'll tell him that he doesn't need to be this condescending. But he has not responded to the question I asked. The guy said on that timeline that Joshua should come and learn how to engage. Yeah. Yes. The atheist told the Christian that he should follow me and learn how they used to do this thing. Meanwhile, the guy did not answer my questions. The guy dodged all my questions. He are now recommending. You must know how to lead the conversation. If not, you are going to be thrown off balance a lot of times. You must decide that you're going to lead the conversation. It means you determine how fast it goes, you determine how slow it goes, you determine when you want to end it, right? You must be able to lead the conversation. I can have a conversation with one person on one subject for 2 hours, and I'm only discussing one question. Just one question. There was some time late last year, a friend of mine was serving somewhere, and she told me that this guy was always bullying her with all this atheistic stuff, and she didn't know how to respond. So she wanted to do a group chat where me, her, and the guy would interact. So I said, no problem, that's fine. So she created the group chat. This was like maybe October last year. She created the group chat and then added me, added the guy, and the guy now said that he has many issues with a lot of things that Christians believe. I said, okay, I can't help your many issues, but I can help one. So which one do you want to discuss? He now said that Christians say that people can be healed by faith. Right? So obviously he was bringing up the miracle thing. I asked him one question, just one question. The guy tried to dodge. Eventually he stopped responding. He blocked me. No, he chatted me privately. He left the group, chatted me privately, and tried to throw me off with some physics things. We were talking about miracles. The guy now went into the universe and started talking about. Unfortunately, he didn't know that I like natural theology. I really like it. So it was very easy for me to respond. So when I responded, I told him that this thing he's saying is not what the general theory of relativity says. I now quoted the theory for him. And I said that there's an assumption in this theory that he's not taking note of. The guy now understood that there's problem. He studied physics in the university. So the guy now understood that there was problem. So he left. Blocked me. I went to tell my friend that he respects me. And that he's no longer an atheist, he's now agnostic. When she told me, I was like, what kind of pettiness is that? Okay, so you are no longer atheist, but you don't know. You are not. But the point is, he tried a lot of times to change the discussion, to change the subject of the conversation. And I'm like, no. This thing you are saying, we can discuss it, but it's not today. Today, what we're talking about are miracles, right? And let's stick to it. But a lot of times, people just want to just take you here. It doesn't help. It's usually a waste of time. So you must be able to lead the conversation. Let's do Luke chapter 20. Luke chapter 20, verse 4. Luke chapter 20. Jesus used questions a lot. In fact, I have a document. I have like 135 questions that Jesus asked. Yeah. Jesus used questions a lot. Like a lot. Jesus used questions like a Nigerian. You ask me a question, you answer with a question. If you don't like it. Alright, so Luke chapter 20, verse 4. Okay, let's read from verse 1. One day, as Jesus was teaching the people in the temple and preaching the gospel, the chief priests and the scribes with the elders came up and said to him, "Tell us by what authority you do these things, or who is it that gave you this authority?" He answered them, "I also will ask you a question. Now tell me, was the baptism of John from heaven or from man?" Verse 5 says, "And they discussed it with one another, saying, if we say from heaven, he will say, why did you not believe him? But if we say from man, all the people will stone us to death, for they are convinced that John was a prophet." So they answered that they did not know where it came from. And Jesus said to them, "Neither will I tell you by what authority I do these things." Now if you read this thing, you may think that Jesus is just being petty. They came to ask him a question. He now said, "I will ask you. If you answer, I will answer." So he asked them a question that he knew they could not answer. Jesus knew what he was doing, though. He asked them a question that put them in a trap. He knew that they could not answer. Do you get? That's why he asked them that question. Because they could not answer the question. So they came back and said they are not going to answer. He now said that if you not answer, me too, I will not answer. Do you know why Jesus did that? It's because what Jesus was doing was that Jesus was actually exposing their true intentions. These people did not come to have answers to the question. They actually just came to look for trouble. They came to look for trouble. And there are some people that will do that kind of thing. They will come to look for trouble. One of the ways that you expose their intentions is by questions. There's something that Frank Turek does. Frank Turek is an apologist. I like Frank Turek because he makes a lot of the philosophical things we say, he makes them very accessible. If you follow someone like Dr. Craig, he's going to be up here, and that man is not anybody's mate. So it may be really difficult to follow Dr. Craig, right? Even though if you eventually get to know what he's saying, it's going to help you. But it's quite a lot of times. But Frank Turek makes it accessible for everybody. It's the same kind of thing that Ravi does. There's a whole lot of philosophical background that comes into the things that someone like Ravi says, but Ravi will never take you that far, right? He makes it popular, makes it available to people, right? So if Ravi came to Nigeria, for example, Ravi was supposed to come to Nigeria this year until the devil's... This corona is not... So if Ravi comes to Nigeria and you put out an invite, you're going to have a whole lot of people there. If Dr. Craig comes to Nigeria and you put out an invite, you may not have up to 100 people at that meeting. Because they're not going to understand what he's saying. Do you get the point? They're not going to understand what he's saying. But we need both people, right? We need the people that are deeply philosophical and academic, and we need the people that make it accessible on a popular level. So Frank Turek is one of those people that makes it accessible. When he gives his talks, he actually does mini debates with the people that have questions for him. If he notices that someone is being belligerent, or someone is being nasty, or someone is just being unnecessarily rude, he asks them a question. If Christianity is true, would you believe it? You see, all your noise rises and falls on this question. If Christianity is true, are you going to believe? If you say no, there's no point having this conversation. Right? If you say yes, then I can help you. I've not seen anybody that said yes. I've not. The closest people have said is that they will consider it if it's true. But I've not seen anybody that said yes, I will consider it if it's true. I've not seen anyone. But that's a question, and what he does with that question is that he exposes the true intentions. A lot of people are not Christians not because they are not convinced by Christianity, but because they just don't want to be Christians. So even if Christianity is true, they are not going to agree to be Christians. So questions help to expose motive. Let's do Luke 20 again. Let's go down to verse. I love this. I think I talked about this story. Alright, let's read from verse 19. Luke 20 verse 19. Luke 20:19. The scribes and the chief priests sought to lay hands on him at that very hour, for they perceived that he told this parable against them, but they feared the people. So they watched him and sent spies who pretended to be sincere. Are you hearing? Who pretended to be sincere, that they might catch him in something he said, so as to deliver him up to the authority and jurisdiction of the governor. So they asked him, "Teacher, we know that you speak and teach rightly and show no partiality, but truly teach the way of God." Are you seeing bad people? So you see the context. These guys pretended to be sincere. Their point was they wanted to catch him in something that he said. So they will say, okay, this is what this guy said, let's kill him, right? They now came to him and started whining him. Verse 22. This is now their question. Is it lawful for us to give tribute to Caesar or not? Verse 23 now says, but he perceived their craftiness and said to them, show me a denarius. Whose likeness and inscription does it have? They said, Caesar's. He said to them, then render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. And they were not able in the presence of the people to catch him in what he said, but marveling at his answer, they became silent. Now see the question they asked him. Is it lawful for us to give tribute to Caesar or not? What was Jesus' answer? He didn't answer the question, no. Do you see that Jesus didn't answer the question? He asked them a question, right? Whose image and superscription is on it? They say Caesar. He said, okay, give to Caesar the things that belong to Caesar, and give to God the things that belong to God. Now let me explain the dilemma that Jesus was in. If Jesus said, don't pay taxes to Caesar, they are going to report him to Rome. Do you get? They're going to kill him. If Jesus said, pay taxes to Caesar, they'll say, you see, this is part of the Romans that are enslaving us. So, whatever Jesus did, he could not get out of this situation by answering this question. Right? And there are a lot of times people do those kind of things. They are called compound questions. So someone comes to ask you, say, Juliet, does your mother know you are stupid? The answer to this question cannot be yes or no. If you say yes, it means I'm stupid and my mother knows. If you say no, it means I'm stupid and my mother doesn't know. Either way, you're stupid. Do you get? That's a compound question. It's a question that is asked with an assumption that is made. Meanwhile, that assumption it has not been settled. I mean, you guys have not talked about it. So, what are you going to do if you're in this situation? Someone came and asked you this question, what will you say? Like, that's the point. Have we agreed on the fact that I'm stupid before you're asking if people know about my stupidity or not? Do you get the point? That's exactly the kind of thing that they were doing with Jesus here. So what Jesus did was that he used a question. But the reason he did that was because he perceived their craftiness. He knew that these guys are up to no good. So he's going to dodge. One of the ways to dodge is questions. So he says, give to Caesar the things that are Caesar's and give to God the things that are God's. So Jesus introduced a third option into the equation. Because obviously they understood what he was saying. When you look at this thing, it belongs to Caesar. You can give your taxes to Caesar. But when you look at yourself, whose image and superscription is on you? It's God. So give to God the things that belongs to God. So you see, whether you give taxes to Caesar or not is of no importance. Just ensure that you are giving to God. That's like the point that Jesus was making. And the guys were like, wow, who is this guy? Okay, so let's do verse 27. I think the other day, that day Julius left, we looked at this passage. Then came to him some Sadducees, those who denied that there is a resurrection. And they asked him a question, saying, Teacher, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies having a wife but no children, the man must take up the widow and raise up offspring for his brother. Now there were 7 brothers. The first took a wife and died without children, and the second and the third took her, and likewise all 7 left no children and died. Afterward, the woman also died. In the resurrection, therefore, whose wife will the woman be? For the 7 had her as wife. Now, the people that are asking Jesus this question, the Bible makes it clear from verse 27 that they are Sadducees. They do not believe there is a resurrection. Do you see? They do not believe that there is a resurrection. But they came to him asking him questions about the resurrection. But you see what they did? What they did was that they made a caricature of the thing. So this is like a straw man. They brought up one cooked up story. They said that now, they didn't say it was a parable. They say now there are 7 brothers. Like this kind, they knew the guys. Sure you get? So they came with this story and presented to Jesus, but their context is that they don't even believe there's a resurrection. Then you are coming to ask questions of the resurrection. It means that this question they were asking was not the point. The point they were trying to make is that it is absurd for a resurrection to happen because of this thing that they've said. So does that mean that in heaven 7 of them will be fighting over her as the wife? Of course, that's not going to happen in heaven. Therefore, the resurrection cannot occur. Do you get what they are doing? So this is what they were doing, but they didn't come out to say it. But Jesus exposes it very clearly in his response. So look at verse 34. This is Jesus' response. And Jesus said to them, the sons of this age marry and are given in marriage, but those who are considered worthy to attain that age and to the resurrection from the dead, neither marry nor are given in marriage, for they cannot die anymore, because they are equal to angels and are sons of God, being sons of the resurrection. But that the dead are raised, Even Moses showed in the passage about the bush where he calls the Lord the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob. Now he is not God of the dead, but of the living, for all live to him. Then some of the scribes answered, Teacher, you have spoken well, for they no longer dared to ask him any question. So Luke chapter 20, they actually planned Jesus to, right? At the end of the chapter, they gave up. Do you get? But you can see what Jesus does from verse 37. He says, but that the dead are raised, which is what Jesus knew was their original intention after all. Jesus addressed it. It means that a lot of times we have to go beyond the questions that people are asking and respond to the people that are asking the questions. So how Ravi says it is that we don't respond to questions, we respond to questioners. We don't respond to questions, we respond to questioners. Yes. So if you and Juliet ask me the same question, I may give you two different answers. Yeah. Because you may be asking that question out of a bias, but she's asking because she honestly wants to know. Right? One of the things that helps you to actually show what the person is interested in, to ensure that you bring out the person's bad mind, black belly, you bring it out to the fore, right, is the use of questions, which is what Jesus did with when they asked him about the taxes, right? So you use questions a lot of times. You use questions to ensure that people's hidden intentions are brought out to the fore. Right? Now, those would be what I would say that questions help us to do. There are certain questions that I think that are very important. What do you mean by that? That's a very important question. What do you mean by that? And I do it a lot of times. Someone says, Aisha, I think we were chatting yesterday. You asked me, there was a question you asked me. Was it yesterday? Or the day before yesterday? No, about IVF. Yeah, recently, right? There was that thing that we did. Yes. So I asked you, what do you mean? Because she asked something about is genetic what, Seth? Genetic engineering. Can you defend it from the Bible? Right? And so I had to ask the question, what do you mean by genetic engineering?
Is it because you do not know or because you want to?
Well, whatever the case is, I needed it to be clear. If I don't know about genetic engineering, that will help me know what genetic engineering is. Right? If I know what genetic engineering is, that will also help me know what she's asking. For example, when someone says that you cannot believe in God and believe in evolution. Now, that's a very bold thing to say. If someone said that to you, do you believe in evolution, Long T? What would you say? You're a Christian. I know you're a Christian. Do you believe in evolution?
Okay.
Yes or no?
Yes or no? I want to ask you a question.
Can you imagine? Okay, all right. So let me hear your question.
Okay. Well, I think I do.
All right. Now, you see, the point would be that there are different kinds of evolution. Do you get the point? So if someone said that, do you believe in evolution? I'm going to ask you what you mean by evolution. What exactly do you mean when you say evolution? Do you mean that there was a soup, and then from the soup, something happened inside the organic soup, then life was formed, and then from there, increasing levels of complexity and random mutations, and we are humans? Or do you mean that God created the first life, and then that life has become increasingly complex? Or do you mean microevolution? Because there's microevolution and macroevolution. These first two things I said are macro. There's microevolution. Microevolution has been observed today, right? Like you have a cell, you allow it to be exposed to some stimuli, then something small will change, right? Now, there's microevolution that has been observed. So if someone says Do I believe in evolution? Of course, I believe that microevolution is true. But I do not believe in macroevolution. Right? But if I said no, it's going to be a mistaken view. Or that person is going to have a mistaken understanding of my view. Do you understand? You never go wrong when you ask someone, what do you mean by that? Even when you know what the person means. Yeah, because you don't know what the person means really. Do you get the point? So, someone says, do you believe in love? What do you mean by that? What exactly do you mean when you're talking about love? Do you mean that God has our best interest at heart? Or do you mean that if you see a girl, something can happen? What exactly do you mean? You never go wrong with asking questions. Never. The second question that is very important is, how did you arrive at this conclusion? So if your child walks in one day, as Nigerians that we are, let me say God forbid. God forbid though. God forbid. Your child walks in one day and he's 14 and he tells you, Daddy, I want to tell you that I think I'm gay. We know what we'll do, but let's pretend that thing is not what we'll do. Let's pretend that. Because me, I know what I'll do.
What will you do? What will you do?
Quarantine. When I drop in the room, beating morning, afternoon, and evening with the word of God, cane laced with the scriptures. After 3 days, I'll ask you, are you still thinking that? Alright, so let's pretend that that's not what we'll do. What are you going to say to that?
Wow.
You see, that beating may not work. Oh. May not work. It may make the that beating may not work. It may work actually, but it may not work. And unfortunately, you cannot use your child to test which one will work or not. Right? The Bible says that foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child. And it's the rod of correction that drives it out. So me, I'm of the opinion that there are certain levels of folly that don't go out with mouth. They only go out when you are flogged. That's my belief. You don't have to agree with it, but I believe that that's what the Bible says. There's also a passage in scripture that says, if you beat your child, the child will not die. So it means that there is death. Then there's something other than death. You are sure that if you beat the child will not die. But you're not sure that if you don't beat the child. So I'm very sympathetic towards flogging disciplinarily. Right? There was this video that was trending of that Zambian man that was slapping his son and people were saying he's abuse. What's that? If you came home with that result as a Nigerian, is that what your parents will do to you? They will now be knocking you on your head, saying, well, can't you read? Can't you read? How will you even bring the result home? I mean, how will you do it? Like, how will you do it? So, personally, I'm actually sympathetic towards flogging. But I also think that there is a way that flogging can push the child away. Right? And I'm not a parent, so I really don't even know how these things are going to work. God just has to give us wisdom. But the point is that if you're going to engage this child, what are you going to say? The child comes and tells you that he's gay. What are you going to tell him? You're not gay. So what you're not gay, Jesus. So what you need to do is you need to ask questions. How did you arrive at that conclusion? Now I know that this is an emotionally, now we're talking about it, it's just gist. God forbid, none of our children will come and tell us that nonsense. But if that kind of thing happened, how are you going to respond? If you do not engage the child, you will lose the child. Unfortunately, you can flog the child and the child will calm down. The child goes to the university and does what he wants to do. Finishes university, gets a job and calls you and says, you know that thing I told you when I was 14 that you thought you won? I'm back there now. Right? So, there's that. We need to be wrapping up. So, how did you arrive at that conclusion? That's very important. How did you arrive at that conclusion? Number 3, why do you think this is true? So we're asking what, we're asking how, we're asking why. What do you mean by that? How did you arrive at that conclusion? And why do you think this is true? When you ask why do you think this is true, again, you are giving the person a chance to defend his views. Why do you think this is true? This thing you're saying, why do you think it's true? So you are making the person talk, right? You are helping the person speak. You are trying to gather information about what the person believes, right? And then you are actually plotting your defense, right? You're plotting your defense. So, let's end it here at this point. There's more to say about questions, but this is a good enough basis for us. So are there any questions on questions? All right.
I have a question. I just want to know how to deal with this because I was talking with a friend, and then the talk about me being okay. I told him I'm receiving this apologetics training, and then he was like, okay, try to engage more. After that, he sounded very knowledgeable about it. Are you one? He said, no, he's not, and no, he can't be. I was like, okay, why? He said, well, they are majorly argumentative, that he believes that our faith should just be simplistic in itself. Christ came, he died, and that's it. There is no further argument to it. I was now trying to, okay, I didn't ask the questions.
Yeah.
Because I've not been introduced to this. So I told him, well, I think it is a tool. It depends on how people wield it.
Yeah.
So some people use it to win arguments, and I think it is a tool for evangelism. I was like, Nancy, how does arguments win souls? No, what we do is we argue, but we don't win souls. I was like, but we do.
Yeah.
Like all his idea about, in fact, it sounded like it's a bad thing to be.
Yeah.
And that's coming from a Christian. How am I supposed to handle that?
It's actually an issue. We went to, I won't call the place for security sakes, but went somewhere to go and do an apologetics training a couple of years ago. These people invited us for the apologetics training. And on the first night, while Uncle was speaking, it was obvious that the people did not believe that this thing makes sense. Yeah. It was so bad that night we had to do a vigil. Yes, to pray that God will open their hearts. I won't call the name of the place, but you know, that place you're thinking about, that's the place. So it's actually a major issue. A lot of people think that people that do apologetics are argumentative people who just want to argue. We are not interested in people. We're just interested in winning arguments. But that's just false. Of course, it's true that there are some people that are like that. But that exactly is the point, that those people are like that. Right? That's not... The fact that people do apologetics wrongly does not make apologetics wrong. It just makes those people that do it wrongly. That's just what it is. It's like kind of the arguments that people give against Christianity. That Christianity can also be a violent religion. We see the Crusades, Christians killed people in the Crusades and all of that. But that just means what it means, that those people did Christianity wrongly. You cannot use that action of the people that did the Crusades to say that Christianity is a violent religion. The only way you can say Christianity is a violent religion is if you can show us from the teachings of Christianity or from teachings of Jesus that there is violence implied or there is violence commanded. If you cannot do that, then you cannot say Christianity is violent. The best you can say is that those people were wrong, and we can apologize on their behalf. We are sorry for how those guys acted. That's not what we believe in. In the same way, for apologists, right? 1 Peter 3:15 is very clear that we should do this in a gentle and in a courteous manner, right? So we're not meant to be all argumentative, trying to, like I said, we should make it a point of duty to not embarrass people. Because I'm telling you, you can make people look like idiots in public. And you shatter them forever. It will be such that by the time you finish with them, they will not even accept your Christianity because of how you humiliated them in showing them that Christianity is true. That's not what we are about. But some people do that, right? Some people do that. But that's not what we are about. We are not meant to be about that. So that all we can say is that the truth is actually that some people do it wrongly. But that's what it means. They do it wrongly. It doesn't mean that the thing itself is wrong. But how does arguments help in evangelism? Maybe the word he's not comfortable with is argument. Because he thinks that an argument is a fight. An argument is not a fight. Next class, we're going to start doing logic. An argument is not a fight. An argument is a set of statements. That's the proper word. A set of statements that have premises and has a conclusion. That's an argument. So if I say, Longtang is wearing a black gown. Black gowns are fine. Therefore, Longtang is wearing a fine gown. That's an argument. We didn't fight. I just made it say, that's an argument, right? So if he has issues with the word argument, he should say that apologists give answers or responses. And he would know what that means if he used to do evangelism. The reason why you are not interested in having answers is because you don't preach to people. If you go and preach to someone and the person says that, how can you prove to me that you believe in one God and not three gods? What are you going to say? I've told you, I'll just allow the Holy Spirit to do his work. I didn't come here to argue. You either believe or you perish. You see, the reasons why people are not interested in answers is because they don't preach. The more you preach, most people will not just take it like you have said it, so let's just agree. No, that's usually not how it works. People usually ask questions, right? You should be able to give them answers. So if he has a problem with that word argument, answers, responses, replies to the questions people ask. That's basically what we're about. Yeah. So yes, it's a tool for presenting the gospel. It's not a cult in any sense of the word. All right. Any other question? All right. Mark. Gift. Help us check for Mark. Tell him that they can start setting up if they want to. All right. So we're not going to do the book review this afternoon. Let's try to respond to those memes that we're discussing on the page. Okay, so let me send them again. There were two of them. There were very good responses actually to those memes. All right. So the first one is I just sent them back to the group again, so it will show up on you. The first one is this "Who wants to be a millionaire?" question. Have you seen it?
No, I'm still.
Do you use Glow?
So?
What network do you use? Oh, sorry. You and Glow are the same. Alright, so the question is, what is God's role in the COVID-19 outbreak? A. Unaware it is happening. B. Aware, but unwilling to stop it.
Okay, that
You saw it, yeah?
yes.
Uh-huh. Yeah. C. Aware, but unable to stop it. D. Deliberately caused it. I think that the answers given to these were quite good, except that I asked other questions. Basically, Kelechi and Aisha were responding to that. And they basically talked about, so he talked about, God has appointed a time when the world is going to be rid of evil and all of that. And if every time God intervenes, the miracle will no longer be the exception, it's going to be the norm, then the word miracle will cease to lose meaning. Right? That was basically what you were saying. You want to add something to that?
I have a question from Martin.
Oh, he's listening. Okay, all right.
So he said that, is it right to say "I don't know" when your opponent asks you a question? And what if you ask your opponent a question and he says "I don't know"? How can you say?
All right. Is it right to say "I don't know"? Please, by all means, say you don't know if you don't know. The truth is that people hate dishonesty, and people can see it when you're lying. I don't know how it happens, but I've actually witnessed it once. Yes. Someone gave a false answer, and it was just obvious that this answer was not thought of. This person was just trying to respond to all the questions on the spot. It's okay to say, I don't know the answer to this question you're asking. I'm going to check it out and I'll get back to you. Right? And if you ask the person and the person says, I don't know, appreciate the person's honesty and ask the person another question. There are many questions you can ask. But I assure you, nobody is going to come and tell you, I don't believe God exists. Then when you ask the person why, the person will say, I don't know. No, they won't do that. Is when you are getting deep that I don't know will start coming out, right? Because there are a lot of places where there are not going to be answers, right? And it's okay to say I don't know. It's okay to say I don't know, really. So I'm sure that he has heard because we're still streaming. All right. So you were talking about. So that was the point that Casey was making. So he also talked about the fact that God's intervention is based on his sovereignty. And the truth is that this COVID thing, we don't know enough to say that God is not intervening, right? God may actually be intervening, reducing the number, ensuring some people do not get infected, healing people. We actually have testimonies of people that have been healed supernaturally from the whole COVID thing. So I asked 2 questions. The first question is that if God is intervening by reducing how bad the impact of COVID is, or this is just my question, if God is intervening by reducing how bad the impact of COVID is, why can't he intervene by wiping it all off? Because he's already intervening. So, who wants to respond? The answer is very simple, though. I'll tell you, it's a simple one-word answer. The answer is the wisdom of God. That's the answer to the question. I'm sure you've thought about it, but you were thinking that it's not the answer. That's the answer to the question. If God decides to intervene by reducing the impact, and he doesn't intervene by totally wiping it off, then he knows what he's doing. Let me put it this way. God has morally sufficient reasons for allowing it to happen. God has those morally sufficient reasons. Do we know the sufficient reasons that God has? No, we don't. Will we ever know? Most likely, we may not know. But again, we can give an example. The example is is the world we live in now. We live in a world where free will exists, right? Do you think God could have created another kind of world where love was possible? Besides this kind of world. Oh. Yeah. That's exactly my point. It was bringing us to omnipotence. What does it mean when the Bible says, or what does it mean when we say that God is omnipotent? Why you? It's not a trick question. It's a simple question. Alright. So you hear what she said. God can do anything, right? But that's not true. The Bible says God cannot lie.
Oh yeah.
So can God do everything? Can God do anything? At least that's one biblical answer, that God cannot do everything. God cannot lie. What it actually means, if you are going to understand omnipotence, is that God can do everything that is logically possible. That's what omnipotence means. Because there are some things that are logically impossible. Yes, that's actually the definition of nonsense. Yeah. For example, can God create a married bachelor? Or can God create a female bachelor? So if you say, no, God cannot create a female bachelor, you say, you see what we're saying? We're saying that your God is not omnipotent. One of the ways that the atheists put it is, can God create a rock that is too heavy for him to lift? What will you say? Can God create a stone that is too heavy for him to lift?
Yes, sir.
Are you saying that God is not omnipotent? You see, it's nonsense because there is no stone that is too heavy for God to lift. Do you get the point? It's a logical impossibility.
So the question is wrong.
Yes. The question is nonsense. The question, what they are just saying is that, can God do nonsense? That's what they are saying. But you see, C.S. Lewis says that nonsense remains nonsense even if you ascribe it to God. Like, even if, so, a female bachelor, can God create a female bachelor? We know that a female bachelor does not exist. Like, it is not possible for it to exist. So can God do it? Of course, it's not possible for it to exist. Do you get the point? And I know people, maybe not theologians, that have objections to this definition of omnipotence, and they feel like it puts God in a box, and they think that it actually diminishes on the power of God. But it doesn't. It doesn't diminish on the power of God at all. At all. This is the point, is that God has the power to create anything that is creatable. Some things are not creatable. Do you get the point? There are some things that cannot be created. Some things cannot exist. Alright? Or does God have the power to dissolve himself into non-existence? If you say yes, you are going to be running into trouble. If you say no, they are going to say your God is not omnipotent. The point is that God cannot be dissolved into non-existence. So if something cannot exist, you cannot tie it to God. Do you understand the point? Right? So the point would be that the way this world is, this is the only kind of world where love can exist. Right? It means that God could not have created any kind of world if he wanted love to exist. Do you get? So this is an example. This gives us an example of why we are in the kind of world we are in now. So in this COVID-19 world, why does God intervene and reduce the burden, but he doesn't wipe off the burden totally? We don't know enough to say, but we know that the wisdom of God ensures that God has morally sufficient reasons. Right? There is, when we come to, later on when we come to talking about these issues, we're going to talk about it. But there's something that is called, what's the name of that effect? I can't remember the name. But scientists have shown that, they say that energy is neither created nor destroyed, it's converted from one form to another. Scientists have shown that the effect of the wings of a butterfly that is flapping can cause an earthquake. Yes. A butterfly is flapping his wings, and the effect of that thing that it generates is translated, and it causes an earthquake somewhere. So the point is that you do not know enough, like you don't even have an idea of, have you thought about something? Maybe you were going out once, then your phone fell into the gutter, and maybe it was raining and water moved it away. In your mind, you were now like, why didn't God just delay me in the house for 5 seconds? Have you had those kind of thoughts before? Like, why didn't God just... You see, if you were delayed by 1 second, that reality would not have existed. So how do you know that if God wipes off COVID-19 totally, he's not going to create a worse reality that there is? The answer is, we don't know, but we know the wisdom of God. So all of the answers that came up until that point were good enough. So when I asked that question, the answer to that question was supposed to be God's wisdom. We know that this is how God wants to do it. And we trust his wisdom. We don't have reasons to question his wisdom, basically. Alright, so you now said that God can wipe it off if he totally chooses to.
Yeah.
Right? So if he doesn't wipe it off, it's because he doesn't choose to. So he's wicked. Do you see the issue with that? So can God wipe it off? Only God knows. Because God doesn't just work with his power, he works with his wisdom. So if God has considered it in his wisdom, and he has decided to intervene by reducing the impact, but he's not intervening by wiping it off totally, we don't have a right to question. Right? So the other one was, so this was Richard Dawkins, and then so Trump's National Day of Prayer. So you can see the COVID-19 curve. Then after the day of prayer, the curve now shoots up. It now looks like people started. So this chart was from Richard Dawkins, and the propositions in the chart is to subtly ascertain that prayer is ineffective and to say in disguise that God does not exist. So how do you respond to this? Let me see. Juliet was saying, to understand his point, is he trying to say that God is dead, or God is not capable of lifting the plague, or he's not loving enough to deliver the people? Which is what was in the first meme, but that's not the rest. That's not what he's saying in this meme. In this meme, what he's saying is that prayer does not work. And the reason prayer does not work is because there's nobody we are praying to. You get the point. Okay, so Margaret talked about the will of God. Prayer is, the Christian does not ask for what he wants in prayer, but he asks for the Lord's will. Okay. Alright. So that's basically, Makinde said, people have been dying before, and that does not suggest to us that God does not exist. Okay, so Makinde is talking about agreeing together in prayer and all of that. They are prerequisites for answers to prayer. So it's almost looking like what we are saying is that we didn't pray the way we should have prayed. Or we cannot ascertain that those people in the US prayed the way they should have prayed. It's possible they didn't pray together, right? It's possible they didn't pray for the Lord's will. Abi? That's basically what's going on. It's possible they were not agreed in prayer. That's why this kind of thing happened. Alright, so responses.
Sorry, it seems you answered the question.
I didn't though. If you think what I said was the answer, wait for my question. I didn't answer the question. So responses. If someone did this, of course you guys have seen it now. What would be your response? It was Margaret and Makinde that said something, and they are not here. That means the other people here should have responses. You wanted to understand this point. I made the point clear for you. So what are you going to say? Guest students. Aya, respond. What are you going to say? People started dying more after the prayer than before the prayer. What's going on here? How can you people believe that prayer works and this kind of thing is happening? You want to ask a question?
I still asked another question.
What was the other question you asked? Can you read it out?
Is he certain that when the prayer, National Day of Prayer, was declared, the people actually prayed, or is he sure that they agreed as touching the matter at hand?
Alright, so the issues are: number one, it's possible that we do not pray God's will. Number two, the people did not agree together in prayer. Number three, it's possible they didn't even pray.
Yes.
Abi? Alright. Guest students. Picking. We're giving responses now.
It still boils down to the wisdom of God.
So let me put it this way. Assuming God was a father and we are his children, how how would the wisdom of God allow the children to die when he could have saved them?
Almost when they even prayed. Right?
I will become worse when they prayed. No, but this was actually talking of deaths. So, people are dying. Aisha is up to something.
You can't totally say that. You can't totally fault God's wisdom in that, because He alone knows.
Okay, so I agree with that. But now I'm faulting his love. I'm saying if he's a loving father, why would he allow his children to go through these things and die, even when people came to pray to him?
For the believer or for the Christian, physical death is not the end.
Exactly.
So when we die, we know that we have hope that yes, we are going to be with Him. So the death here on earth our life does not come to an end because we are dead physically. And I'll still ask the person, okay, since you say science is superior, why has science not been able to bring their own?
I mean, they've been doing the science since the thing started and people are still dying, right? Yeah. What?
Okay, we'll just touch the aspect of now these people, they are not just praying for God to heal believers. They are unbelievers too that are dying, and God is interested in souls, and then they are dying without being saved, probably. So, how do you explain that?
Again, let me start from where she ended. The reason she said what she said was because of the question I asked. If God is a father and these people are his children, would you allow them to go through all of this? Well, if I'm a father and these people are my children, right, then it would follow that I want them to be with me because I love them. Unfortunately, the only way to be with God is to pass through that curtain of death. At least that's the way it is now. Right? So, if someone was a believer, if the person dies, the person is not supposed to see it as anything wrong. God is not wicked. Let's even assume God killed the person. Let's even say God killed him. Say, kill this person. How will we kill him? COVID-19. Use COVID-19 to kill him. No problem. Even if that's what the case is, God is not a wicked father for doing that. Because the person is still coming to be with him. It's like, I took my children to school, then by 12 in the afternoon, I'm missing them. Then I go to school and collect them from school and bring them back home. They are my children. Do you get? Whether they are on this side of eternity or on this side of eternity, I'm not loving for bringing them to I'm not wicked for bringing them to myself. But again, that's just for believers, right? So this question that you're asking now, this is how I would respond to the question. God is just, right? God is fair. If someone died before they had a chance to give their life to Jesus, it's because God knew that they would not have given their life to Jesus even if they lived for all eternity. So any unbeliever that died without getting saved was allowed to die by the wisdom and the foreknowledge of God, right? That even if this person was alive for the next 90 years, this person is still not going to turn his heart to the Lord, right? So if the person's suffering is ended now, at least on this side, that's not exactly a bad thing. Because whatever the case, the person is still going to keep suffering. If the person was here, the person will keep suffering. Especially because God knows what we are going to do in the future. You were the one, it was you and Abiola I was telling. I was talking about middle knowledge. Yeah, middle knowledge. About the fact that God knows what you will do. God knows what you will do. If you decide to change what you will do, what God knew will change. But okay. But the point is, God knows what you are going to do. Do you get? So all the people that are going to be saved, God knows. The people that are not going to be saved, God knows. Right? But you do not know. I do not know. Right? But God knows. So if God is going to be fair, if God is going to be just, it would mean that people are allowed to make their decisions, and God is supposed to honor the decisions they make. Right? So if God says you are not going to die until you become saved, so you keep living and keep living and keep living and keep living and keep living, there are some people that are never going to be saved. They're not going to be saved. They are not going to go to heaven, no matter the point, no matter the issue. They are not going to go to heaven at all. Do you get? And at some point, God has to respect their decision. So if God allows them die, He just respected their decision. Do you get the point? So, the responses we've given is number one, that prayer has to be in accordance to the will of God, and the will of God is powered by the wisdom of God, right? Number two, it's possible the Christians did not even pray in the way. There's a way that the Bible has showed us how to pray. It's possible they didn't pray in that way. Number three, it's possible that they did not even pray at all. Right? It's possible they did not pray at all. This is March 14, March 16, March 18, March 20, March 24, March 26. And finally, people dying is not exactly a bad thing. In fact, on the atheistic worldview, if people die is a good thing. Yes, now, because they were suffering here, that's the end of their suffering. I mean, it's like they have been saved. Did you watch Avengers Endgame? Have you watched any Marvel? I'm sorry, there are things inside that movie. You know that Thanos was saying that if he kills half of the population, it's salvation. You remember when he was saying that? You not simply shifts. He was saying that it's salvation. That's basically the atheistic worldview. That if you die, you just go into nothingness. That's just the end. Do you get? So he has no point asking this question on an atheistic worldview. Actually, this thing is self-destructing. If you bring it from the atheist perspective, as an atheist, you bring this kind of thing. What are you saying? You're saying nonsense. You're basically saying, why did God save them? Because on your worldview, what you're saying is that if you're an atheist, when you die, that's the end and everything. The only reason why you should have an issue with this is if you subscribe to a theistic worldview, that some people will go to heaven and some people will go to hell. That's the only way you should have an issue with people dying. Do you get the point? I said that after my Christianity, we're going to read Stealing from God, Frank Turek. Amazing book. There are many arguments that people make that they have to borrow from Christianity to be able to make the arguments. But they are not very obvious. But when you see it, it's going to be very clear. Anyway, any other final question before we disappear?